Alright besties, we need to talk about the chaos that is choosing bottom feeders for your tank. Some of these underwater janitors are absolute legends, while others are straight up setting you up for failure. Today, we're ranking 15 bottom feeders from literal perfection to why would you do this to yourself? So, grab your emotional support snack because we are about to get controversial. Alright, so your tank is getting that green fuzzy situation and you're spiraling. Well, the Panda Garra is the main character while actually doing the work. These little legends are out here double tasking like they're running a legit side hustle, cleaning your glass, and being genuinely entertaining to watch. They got this whole zebra stripe aesthetic going on that's iconic, and unlike some other algae eaters that shall remain nameless, just kidding, thinking of you, Chinese algae eater. These babies won't peace out and stop eating algae when they get older. They're like that friend who's reliable and fun to be around. The only slightly sus thing is that they can get a little spicy with other bottom dwellers sometimes, but hey, boundaries are healthy. They're landing in A tier because they genuinely are great fish that deliver on their promises without being high-maintenance drama queens. Alright, so now you're staring at your tank, you're wondering, are my fish even alive? Because these sneaky little danger noodles have perfected the art of vanishing. Kuhli Loaches are basically the aquatic equivalent of that friend who's chronically offline. You know they exist, you love them dearly, but good luck actually seeing them when you want to. These elongated babies spend most of their time playing hide and seek in your substrate like they're getting paid for it. When they do grace you with their presence, they're absolutely adorable and surprisingly social with their own kind. They're peaceful, they'll clean up leftover food, and they're genuinely fascinating when you can catch them doing their little wiggle dance, but let's be real. If you can't see your fish, are you even keeping them? The constant game of spot the danger noodle gets old fast. B tier, because they're objectively good fish, just invisible ones that'll have you questioning, why? But what happens when you take a fish and give it the aerodynamics of a supercar? Well, you get Hillstream Loaches that are basically the Formula 1 drivers of the fish world. These flat little pancakes are absolutely obsessed with high flow environments. We're talking waterfall level current that would send other fish into witness protection. They'll stick to your glass like they're defying physics, munching algae while looking like living art pieces. The glow-up potential is real, because these fish are genuinely stunning when healthy, but here's the thing, they ain't playing around with their care requirements, so be warned. Room temperature water, crazy high oxygen levels, specific rock setups, it's given high maintenance relationship energy, and they're not beginner friendly, if you couldn't guess, and if you mess up their flow requirements, they'll literally just stop existing. B tier, because when you get it right, they're incredible, but they're definitely not for everyone, and they will humble you real quick. This is going to get some of you guys real excited. Let me tell you about the fish equivalent of capybara. Corydoras. Yeah, these catfish are out here being absolutely perfect, and nobody can convince me otherwise. These little armored angels come in like 50 different species, from the tiny Corydoras pygmaeus to the chunky Corydoras barbatus. And every single one of them is a certified good boy. They're social butterflies who literally cannot function without their squad, they're peaceful with everyone, and they actually clean your substrate instead of just rearranging it. They got these little whiskers that are criminally cute. Watch them do their little wiggle dance when they're excited and you feed them, and just try not to smile. I'll wait. They're hardy enough for beginners, but interesting enough that experienced aquarists still obsess over rare species. The only con is that you need at least 6, but honestly, that ain't a bug, it's a feature, because more Corydoras equals more serotonin. S tier, baby, because these fish are literally perfect, and anyone who disagrees with me can fight me in the comments. They're the standard that all other bottom feeders wish they could achieve. Listen, sometimes good things really do come in small packages, and dwarf chain loaches are proof that size ain't everything in the aquarium world. These tiny loaches max out at like 2 inches, making them the perfect choice for people who want loach personality without needing a mansion-sized tank. And there's probably a lot of you out there. They got this whole chain link pattern going on that's genuinely aesthetic, plus they're actually active during the day, unlike their larger cousins who think daytime is for sleeping. The social dynamics here are chef's kiss. They'll form little groups and follow each other around like they're in formation. They're peaceful, they're entertaining, and they won't outgrow your setup in 6 months. The catch, though? Good luck finding them at your local pet store, because they're not exactly common, and when you do find them, your wallet might shed a little tear. But honestly, for a smaller loach that brings all the personality without the commitment issues, they're worth the hunt. Solid B tier, because they tick all the boxes for people who want something special without going full send on tank requirements. Yo, my dude Peacock Goby walked into the aquarium hobby and said, "I'm gonna be absolutely gorgeous and have personality for days." These little New Guinea natives are serving looks with their rainbow coloration and dramatic fins. Plus, they got enough attitude to be genuinely entertaining centerpiece fish. Unlike some gobies that are basically aquatic introverts, Peacock gobies will actually interact with their environment and show off for you. They're surprisingly hardy for something so pretty, but they won't bulldoze your plants, and they coexist pretty peacefully with most community fish. The males get extra spicy during breeding season, and they get even more intense colors, so pretty cool. Watching them set up territories is better than reality TV. They do prefer softer water and appreciate some hiding spots, but they're not throwing tantrums about specific parameters like some fish we mentioned. They're landing in A tier because they bring that perfect combo of beauty and personality that makes them genuinely special bottom dwellers without being total divas about their care requirements. Listen, my friends, when you want a Pleco, but your tank isn't the size of a swimming pool, the clown Pleco is basically your fairy godmother. These little legends max out at around 4 inches, which means they can actually live comfortably in normal, human-sized aquariums instead of requiring a mortgage payment worth of glass. They got this whole zebra situation going on that's iconic, and they're actually active during the day. Sometimes. Well, unlike those larger cousins who are basically vampires, you know. They'll munch on algae, nibble on driftwood, and generally mind their own business without terrorizing other fish. The substrate stirring is minimal, so your plants aren't going to hate you, and they won't redecorate your entire tank overnight. They do appreciate good water quality and some hiding spots, but they're not throwing fits about specific parameters. The only real downside is that they're not going to solve major algae problems single-handedly, but honestly, no fish should be your entire cleanup crew anyway. C tier here, because they're solid, reliable fish that do exactly what they're supposed to do without drama, even if they're not the most exciting option out there. Bumblebee Goby are given its complicated relationship status energy, and honestly, that's a perfect way to describe keeping these little yellow and black strapped babies. They're adorable. They've got personality for days, and when they're happy, they're genuinely entertaining to watch, but care requirements are sending mixed signals harder than your situationship. Some sources swear they need brackish water, and others insist, oh no, fresh water's fine. They're picky eaters who might ignore flakes entirely, and they can get territorial in ways that will surprise you. Plus, they're tiny, so finding take mates that won't accidentally eat them is a whole situation. When you get everything right, they're incredible, but getting everything right requires research, patience, and probably some trial and error. They're not beginner-friendly despite being sold as such, and the contradictory care information online is genuinely pretty frustrating. C tier. Because they can be incredible fish for the right person, but they're definitely not the easy, beginner-friendly option that some pet stores pretend they are. Yo, these tiny Otocinclus species are basically the overachievers of the algae-eating world. They're out here working harder than anybody else, being absolutely precious about it. I mean, seriously, watching a group of ottos methodically clean every surface in your tank is oddly satisfying. Like watching someone organize their entire life. They're peaceful, they won't bother anybody, and they actually stay small, unlike some other algae eaters we could mention, and they're genuinely effective at their job. All great things. The group behavior is adorable, and they won't destroy your plants while doing their cleaning routine. But here's where it gets real. Hey, these little workers will literally starve in clean tanks because they're that dedicated to eating algae in biofilm. What does that mean? Well, you gotta stay on top of supplemental feeding, especially in newer setups, and they can be surprisingly delicate during the adjustment period. They're also wild caught most of the time, which means they need extra patience while settling in. B tier, because when they're established and well fed, they're incredible little fish, but keeping them properly fed requires more attention than some people realize. Folks, we gotta address the elephant in the room. Hello, elephant. Now that that's over with, freshwater eels like Mastacemblis erythrotania are simultaneously fascinating and problematic. Kind of like that friend who's really cool but also chaos incarnate. We all got one. The smaller species like the yellowtail spiny eel can work in community setups, and they're genuinely interesting to watch, with their whole snake-like movement and curious personalities, you know? They're surprisingly interactive once they settle in, and there's something undeniably cool about having an eel in your tank. But, bestie, let's keep it completely real here. These little fish, they're escape artists that would make Houdini jealous. They'll eat anything that fits in their mouth, and their mouths are bigger than you think. And they have specific feeding requirements that can be challenging for beginners. Also, most species get way bigger than people expect. They need secure lids and they can be destructive to planted tanks. The smaller species are landing in E tier because while they can work for experienced aquarists with the right setup, they're genuinely not great choices for most people and definitely not beginner friendly despite being sold as such. Chromobotia macrocanthus entered the chat as the golden retriever of the loach world, and honestly, their personality is absolutely unmatched, but we need to have a serious conversation about size. These orange and black buttes are social butterflies. They're interactive, they're genuinely entertaining, and they can live for decades, becoming legitimate family members. What's the problem, though? Well, as I mentioned, the size. They get absolutely massive. We're talking nearly a foot long, and most people buying them, they got no idea what they're signing up for. That cute little 3-inch baby at the pet store is it's gonna need a 125 plus gallon tank minimum. And good luck finding 5 more, because they need to be in groups. Oh, they're also slow growers, so by the time you realize you have a problem, you already fell in love. And now rehoming becomes an emotional, devastating act. Listen, they're incredible fish that deserve proper care, but they're being sold to people with 20-gallon tanks, and that's just tragic. E tier, not because they're bad fish, they're amazing fish, but because they're completely inappropriate for most aquarist setups, and the pet trade does a terrible job explaining their actual requirements. Now, some fish are basically underwater dinosaurs that belong in public aquariums, not your living room. And large catfish species like shovel-nosed catfish and gulper catfish are perfect examples of just because you can doesn't mean you should. One is an absolute unit that gets massive, and the other will eat literally anything that moves and fits in their mouth, which is most things. And they produce waste like they're trying to single-handedly destroy your water quality. The red-tailed catfish that looks adorable as a baby will grow into a fish that could literally eat your cat. I'm not even joking. They need ponds, or like massive systems. Plus, they're expensive to feed, and rehoming them is nearly impossible because nobody else wants to deal with a 4-foot fish that eats everything. Pet stores are going to sell them to unsuspecting people who think they're getting a cute little catfish, and it's genuinely heartbreaking what happens to these fish when people realize they can't keep them. F here, because these fish should not be in the hobby, period, unless you have a literal pond or public aquarium setup, and the fact that they're sold to regular people is just honestly irresponsible. Now, shell dwellers are basically the tiny house enthusiasts of the fish world. And Neolamprogis multifasciatus has turned living in an empty snail shell into an art form, and it's super fascinating to watch. These little Tanganyika cichlids are like living soap operas. They'll set up territories, move shells around like they're interior decorating, and they got complex social dynamics that are better entertainment than most TV shows. They're actually pretty hardy once established, and watching them breed and raise fry is incredible. The whole shell-dwelling behavior is super unique, obviously, and that makes for genuinely interesting tanks, but we do have to talk about the elephant in the room again. Yeah, he's back. They're cichlids, which means that they can be aggressive little spice packets, especially during the aforementioned breeding season, which can be whenever they want. Tank mate selection becomes crucial because they will absolutely throw fins with anything they perceive as competition. They also need specific water parameters that match Lake Tanganyika, and if you want them to truly thrive, you're looking at a species-specific setup. So they're going to go in C tier. They're incredible fish that offer something completely different, but they need very thoughtful planning, and they're not compatible with just any community setup. Hemalotus pictus showed up to the aquarium hobby with whiskers and attitude. And honestly, they're genuinely cool fish. So, yeah, they deserve a lot more respect than they get. Honestly. These silver speedsters are active, social, and actually interesting to watch, unlike some catfish that just sit there being decorative. They got personality. They're hardy once they're established, and they bring movement and energy to the tank. The problem is literally everything else about keeping them properly. They get bigger than most people expect, around 5 inches, they need groups to be truly happy, they're fast swimmers that need space, and oh yeah, they will demolish any fish small enough to fit in their mouth while you sleep. That cute little itty-bitty wasbora you love? Gone. Yeah, eaten. They're also notorious for getting their fins caught in nets and filters because of their sharp pectoral spines, making maintenance stressful. They're landing in C tier because they can be awesome fish in the right setup. We're talking about 75 plus gallons with appropriate tank mates, but most people underestimate their requirements and end up with problems that they didn't see coming. Don't be most people. Common plecos and other large hippostomus species are like the Great Danes of the aquarium world. They're impressive, but completely inappropriate for most people's living situations. And honestly, the pets trade treatment of these fish is borderline criminal. That adorable little suckerfish at the store will grow into an 18-plus inch waste-producing machine that needs a tank the size of a small swimming pool. They'll bulldoze your plants, rearrange your decorations, and produce more waste than a small neighborhood. And the worst part is that most pet stores sell them as algae eaters to people with 20-gallon tanks. You know what that's like? That's like selling someone a horse and telling them it's a good apartment pet. Yeah, these fish can live for 20-plus years. So that little impulse purchase becomes a 2-decade commitment to either upgrading to massive tanks or finding someone with a pond. F tier, man, because they're completely inappropriate for home aquariums, and they represent everything wrong with how the pet industry treats fish. They belong in public aquariums or massive private systems, not in your living room. But that's enough, fish fam. That's the tea on bottom dwellers, bottom feeders. Some are absolute angels that'll change your life, and others are basically aquatic chaos demons that'll humble you real quick. Drop your hottest takes in the comments, because I know y'all got opinions about this ranking. Are you team Corydoras supremacy, or are you brave enough to defend those large catfish and the bad choices that they make? If you're planning your next bottom feeder edition, let me know what made this list. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button, because we're just getting started with these controversial rankings. And trust me, the next one is going to be even more unhinged. Catch you next time.